Welcome to LeadOn, the podcast for nonprofit leaders who are ready to thrive and change. Brought to you by CNA, Social Impact Consulting, and powered by Notebook LM, we're here to help you lead with clarity, courage, and consistency. No binders, no buzzwords, just bold leadership that moves missions forward.
It is great to be here.
So I want everyone to just, look at the calendar today. It is Tuesday, January 20, 2026. And if you are a nonprofit leader, you know exactly what season this is. The holidays they're a distant memory, the year-end numbers are final, and we are deep in the season of the ritual.
The ritual, that sounds a little ominous.
Oh, you know the one. You sit down, you've got your coffee, you open up a fresh, blindingly white document on your screen, and you type 2026 goals right at the top.
In bold, 14-point font.
Exactly. And you take this deep breath and you pretend, just for a second, that you are starting with a completely clean slate. It feels optimistic.
And, well, unfortunately, it's almost entirely a myth.
It really is, isn't it? That's the problem. We pretend it's a fresh start, but in reality, that so-called clean slate is it's covered in invisible ink. You're actually carrying over last year's backlog.
And the staffing gaps you haven't filled.
Right. And all those temporary workarounds from 2025 that somehow became permanent policy.
That is the reality for most leaders. And that disconnect, between the fantasy of the blank page and the reality of the backlog is exactly why today's deep dive is so critical. We're unpacking Nonprofit Annual Planning 2026 by Damon Kalaluka. And he starts with an argument that, it hits pretty hard.
Oh, yeah.
He says the traditional annual plan usually turns into a wish list that dies in March.
Dies in March. That is painful because it's so true. March is absolutely the graveyard of good intentions.
It often is. But the argument here is that to survive 2026, your plan can't be a static document. It has to be, and I love this phrase, a decision system.
A decision system. I like that. Not a wish list. But before we get into the how, I want to set the stage. Why does planning feel so impossible right now? Every leader I talk to is just exhausted.
It's not just a feeling. The data really backs it up. The source material pulls from the Nonprofit Finance Fund's 2025 survey, and the picture it paints for us right now in early 2026 is, well, it's incredibly stark.
Okay, lay it on us. What are we looking at?
You've got this vice grip happening. On one side, demand is just surging. 85% of nonprofits expect service demand to go up this year. The need is skyrocketing.
So the workload is increasing.
Drastically. But at the exact same time, the financial footing is shaky. The data shows that 36% of organizations, they ended 2024 with an operating deficit.
Wow. So over a third of the sector is starting the year in the red. That kind of puts a damper on that whole new year, new plan energy.
It does. And maybe the most alarming stat, the one that keeps leaders awake at 3 a.m., is that over half of nonprofits report having 3 months or less of cash on hand.
3 months, that's razor thin. That's one grant is late and we might miss payroll thin.
Precisely.
Oh.
So when you have that kind of tension, high demand, low reserves, writing a traditional, here's everything we dream of doing plan is actually dangerous. It sets you up to fail.
It feels futile, doesn't it? Like, why plan if the house is on fire? Maybe we should just grab a bucket and forget the Google Doc.
And that's the temptation.
Yeah.
But that is the exact pivot point Kalaluka is making. Because those things are so tight, you need a plan more than ever.
Okay.
But not a document that sits on a shelf. You need a system that answers 4 very, plain English questions.
All right, let's hear them. What are we replacing the binder with?
4 questions. 1, what outcomes are we driving? 2, what are we prioritizing? And maybe more important, what are we not doing?
Oof, that not doing part, that is the hardest part.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to that because saying no is where the fights start.
It absolutely is. 3rd, how will we measure progress without making staff miserable? And finally, 4th, how will we adjust when the world changes?
If you can answer those 4, you don't just have a plan. You have a filter for making decisions when things get crazy in, say, April.
Exactly. You move from predicting the future to navigating it.
So let's dig into that first question. Outcomes. The source makes a really big deal about the difference between outcomes and activities, and I have to admit, I am guilty of confusing these two.
I think most of us are. It's the most common trap in the sector. We confuse busyness with impact.
So how do we spot the difference?
The source gives a great rule of thumb. Look at the verbs you're using in your plan.
The verbs, like literally the grammar.
Yes. Pull up your draft. If your goals start with verbs like launch, expand, host, you are probably planning an activity. not an outcome.
Hosting a gala is an activity. Launching a website is an activity.
Right. You can do those things perfectly and still not achieve your mission.
Okay, that hurts a little. Launch the new mentorship program is definitely on my list. So, what does a good mission-driven goal actually look like then?
A mission-driven goal describes a change in the real world, usually in the life of the person you serve. So instead of, say, improve service delivery, which is vague, a good goal would be more clients remain housed 6 months after intake.
Oh, I see the difference. One describes what we do, the other describes what happens to the client. They stay housed.
Exactly. Or an education example. Bad goal. Run a job training program. Good goal. More students earn a credential that leads to work. It's a subtle shift, but it changes everything.
It really does. If the goal is just run the program, I'm successful if I unlock the doors in the morning. But if the goal is students get jobs, I have to do a lot more than that.
And that connects back to strategic discipline. The source references Bridgespan here. Defining strategy is deciding how best to use your limited resources. If you focus on activities, you just burn resources doing things. If you focus on outcomes, you spend resources on changing things.
So the practical move here, the hack, is the right outcomes first rule.
That's it. Before you list a single project, write down the change you want to see. Then list the activities. And here's the kicker. Most of the activities you thought were essential, they just won't make the cut.
That's terrifying and liberating at the same time, which brings us to the next step, which I think is going to be the most painful one, the art of subtraction.
Step 2, pick fewer goals than you want.
The source lays down a really hard rule here. How many are we allowed?
3 to 5, max. For the whole organization.
Only 3 to 5. Be real with me. I have 3 to 5 goals for my Tuesday morning staff meeting. How can an entire organization only have 5?
Because if you have more than that, you aren't leading, you're just reacting. The source argues that if you have 14 top priorities, you don't actually have a plan.
You have a what?
You have a coping mechanism.
A coping mechanism. That's a burn, but it's true. We list everything because we're afraid to say no to anything.
It is about fear, yeah. But let's connect this back to that NFF data we talked about, the 3 months of cash. When you have no buffer and a stretched staff, prioritization isn't a luxury. Kalaluka calls it capacity protection.
Capacity protection. I like that. So if a leader is looking at a list of 12 priorities and thinking, but they're all important, what do they do?
The advice here is blunt. If you need more than 5 goals, you don't need another planning session. You need a strategy conversation. You need to face the reality that your appetite is bigger than your stomach.
So you have to cut or you will collapse.
Exactly. And your staff is waiting for you to say it.
Okay, so let's say we've done the brave thing. We've whittled it down to 3 to 5 meaningful outcomes. Now we have to track them. And this is step 3, measuring without misery. Because nothing kills the vibe like a reporting monster.
We all built those, right? The spreadsheets that take 3 hours to fill out every month and no one ever reads them.
Guilty. So how do we measure without drowning in data?
Well, we can't just operate on vibes. The source brings in some heavy-hitting research here from Locke and Latham, who are basically the titans of goal-setting theory.
And what did they find?
Their research is conclusive. Specific, difficult goals outperform vague, do-your-best goals every single time. Specificity focuses attention.
Okay, so specificity drives performance. But how do we do that without creating a soul-crushing spreadsheet?
The source offers a 4-part formula. For every goal, you need 4 things. 1, the success metric. 2, the baseline, where are you today?
Right.
3, the target, what does good look like? And 4, the owner.
And the owner has to be a specific person.
One specific person, not the development committee, one human being whose name is on the line. Because if everyone is responsible, no one is.
I love the litmus test they offer for this. It says, if you cannot say the metric out loud in one sentence, it isn't ready.
That is such a great rule. If you need a paragraph to explain how you're measuring success, you've already lost the team. Complexity is the enemy of execution.
Simple, specific, owned. I like it. Okay, let's move to step 4. This one feels like a total game changer for actually getting things done. The if-then system.
This is where we bridge what they call the knowing-doing gap.
The knowing-doing gap sounds like the story of my life. I know I should go to the gym, but...
Exactly. And leaders aren't lazy. We know what to do. We know we should call donors. But good intentions are not a system. The whirlwind of the day hits, and we freeze.
So how do we fix that paralysis?
We use psychology, specifically Peter Gollwitzer's work on implementation intentions. The idea is to shift from a vague intention like, I want to achieve X, to a specific trigger. When situation Y happens, I will do Z.
Okay, give me a nonprofit example.
All right, take donor retention. A typical goal, a hope would be we will strengthen donor retention.
Vague. Sounds nice, but it's totally vague.
Right. An if-then plan sounds like this. If a donor lapses, then we contact them within 10 business days with a specific re-engagement offer.
Oh, that's so much sharper. It takes the decision-making out of the moment. You don't have to wonder what to do. The rule is already set.
You're deciding in advance how to handle obstacles. So when the obstacle hits, you don't freeze. You just execute the protocol.
It's like programming your organization. If this, then that.
It's simple, but it's one of the most effective ways to make sure a plan actually survives contact with reality.
I love that. Okay, so we have our outcomes, we've prioritized, we're measuring simply, and we have our if-then rules. How do we keep this whole thing alive past March? That's the graveyard.
And that brings us to steps 5 and 6, the rhythm and the board.
Let's start with rhythm. How do we keep the pulse going?
You need a quarterly rhythm. You avoid that set it and forget it mindset. The source references Bridgespan's work on this, on living into your strategic plan.
So what does that look like? Just another meeting?
A very specific meeting. Every 90 days, you stop and ask 3 questions. 1, what are our priorities for this quarter? 2, what are we pausing or stopping to protect our capacity?
There's that subtraction again. You always have to be willing to stop things.
Always. And the third question is my favorite. What is the one indicator that would force us to adjust? You need a tripwire.
A tripwire. Explain that.
It means defining the failure point in advance. If revenue drops below X, we automatically freeze hiring. You decide that when you're calm, not when you're in a crisis.
It sounds so much less stressful than panic calling a meeting.
It's proactive governance instead of reactive scrambling, which leads us right to the board's role in step 6.
Ah, the board. This can be a touchy subject.
It can be. The source is really clear here, referencing board source best practices. The board's job is direction and oversight. It is not to wordsmith.
Can we say that again for the people in the back? The board's job is not to wordsmith.
Right. But here's the catch. If you only show the board the plan once a year, you're training them to be passive. Or worse, anxious because they don't know what's going on.
So how do we fix that? How do we get them out of the weeds?
You give them a simple dashboard, and you review progress on it at every single meeting.
Every meeting.
Every meeting. If strategy is the most important thing, why is it always the last item on the agenda? Put it first. Show them the red, yellow, green status on those 3 to 5 goals.
Bet that feels risky. What if goal is red?
Then you ask for help. You say, we are red on goal, #2, help us think about trade-offs. That engages their brains on the big picture. It turns them into strategic partners, not editors.
That makes so much sense. You focus their energy where it actually adds value.
Precisely.
So to zoom out, we've gone from a blank page on January 20th to a living system, from a wish list to a decision system, from 14 vague priorities to 3 to 5 clear outcomes.
And from do your best to concrete if-then plans. It's a total shift in mindset.
It really feels like the plan is finally working for the leader instead of the leader working for the plan.
That's the goal.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what is the one provocative thought you want our listener to walk away with?
I think the biggest insight from this source, really, for any leader in 2026 is this. A good strategic plan isn't about predicting the future perfectly. We can't do that.
Right. We don't have a crystal ball.
No. So instead, a good plan is about giving yourself permission to say no, so you can actually deliver on the yes. That is the heart of it. If your money and your staffing plan don't match your goals, then your goals are fiction. And as leaders, we have to stop writing fiction and start building systems that can handle reality.
Stop writing fiction. I love that. It's time to get real.
It is.
That's a wrap on LeadOn. If you're fired up to lead with more clarity and follow through, hit subscribe and share the episode. You'll find us on Spotify and at leadonpodcast.com. Until next time, stay focused, stay bold, and lead on.